Madison should be proud. A C+ in algebra is amazing progress for an 8th grader who struggles with math, my mother gushed, passing her phone around the dinner table so everyone could see the text from my brother with a photo of his son's report card. I sat quietly, fork suspended over my barely touched lasagna. Just last week, my daughter Olivia had brought home straight A's with a single A in AP Physics, and my mother's only comment had been, "That A could have been an A if she'd put in a little more effort." "Katie, aren't you going to congratulate Jeff on Madison's improvement?" My father's voice cut through my thoughts. The entire family, my parents, my brother Jeff and his wife Stephanie, their 3 kids, my husband Daniel, and our 2 children, sat around my parents' dining table in Galesburg, Illinois, for our monthly Sunday dinner, a tradition that was becoming increasingly unbearable. "Of course," I forced a smile. "That's great, Madison. Good job." Madison, a gangly 13-year-old more interested in her phone than the adults' conversation, barely glanced up. "Thanks, Aunt Katie." My daughter Olivia, 15 and painfully aware of the family's double standards, shot me a look that said everything words couldn't. Next to her, my 12-year-old son Ethan slumped further in his chair. Last semester, he'd received his first B+ ever, and my mother had suggested we consider a tutor. "So, Jeff, how's the expansion at the dealership going?" My father launched into his favorite topic, my brother's car dealership, which had been partially funded with a loan from my parents that I knew would never be repaid. I excused myself to the kitchen, ostensibly to refill the water pitcher. Daniel followed me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low as he leaned against the counter. "I'm fine," I responded automatically, then sighed. "No, I'm not. Did you hear that? Madison gets celebrated for a C+, but Olivia and Ethan get criticized for their A's and B's. It's always been like this. Jeff is the golden child, and his kids are untouchable. Meanwhile, I'm constantly coming up short, and so are our kids." "I know," Daniel said, rubbing my shoulder. "Your parents definitely play favorites. It's more than playing favorites. It's like our achievements don't matter. They never have." I filled the pitcher with more ice than necessary, the cubes clinking loudly against the glass. "Did I tell you what my mom said when I told her about my promotion?" Daniel's expression told me I hadn't. She said, "That's nice, honey. Did I tell you Jeff just landed the Miller account? It's going to bring in 6 figures for the dealership. My promotion to senior marketing director at Riverside Medical, the promotion I worked 3 years for, was dismissed in a single breath." "Maybe we should skip next month's dinner," Daniel suggested. From the dining room, I heard my nephew Brandon loudly boasting about making the junior varsity basketball team as a bench warmer, though no one would mention that part. Last year, when Ethan had been made team captain of his club soccer team, my mother had merely noted that sports aren't everything and quickly changed the subject. "I don't think skipping one dinner is going to fix this," I said, my hands gripping the counter edge. When we returned to the table, my mother was showing everyone photos from my niece Zoe's dance recital. "Look at her form. The dance teacher says she has natural talent." My thoughts drifted to Olivia's piano recital last month, where she'd performed a complex Chopin piece flawlessly after practicing for months. My parents had attended but left immediately after her performance, claiming they had another commitment. I later discovered the commitment was helping Jeff pick out a new television. "Katie, you're so quiet tonight," my mother said, finally noticing my withdrawal. "Is everything all right at work? I know how stressful your job can be." As if my brother's job selling cars was somehow less stressful than managing marketing for a regional healthcare system. "Work is fine, Mom. We just landed the Simpson Cancer Center account. It's the biggest client in the company's history." A triumph I hadn't bothered sharing until now, knowing it would be minimized. "Oh, that's nice," she said predictably, then immediately turned to Jeff. "Didn't you say the dealership might sponsor the high school football team? That's such wonderful community involvement." And there it was. My major professional achievement reduced to "that's nice," while Jeff's potential sponsorship, which hadn't even happened yet, warranted enthusiastic praise. Beside me, Daniel squeezed my knee under the table. Across from me, Olivia stared at her plate, pushing food around without eating. Ethan had given up entirely and was playing a game on his phone under the table, despite our usual no phones rule at meals. I couldn't bring myself to correct him. The conversation continued, rotating exclusively around Jeff's family. Brandon's basketball, Madison's improved grades, Zoe's dancing, Stephanie's volunteer work, and Jeff's business. Occasionally, my parents would remember to ask Daniel about his architectural firm, but they barely acknowledged my children's existence. As dessert was served, an elaborate chocolate cake for Madison's academic achievement, I felt something inside me snap. "We need to head out," I announced abruptly, standing up. "Olivia has a big test tomorrow to study for." My mother frowned. "But we haven't even had cake yet, and I thought we could all look at the photos from when Jeff's family went to Six Flags last weekend." "Sorry, Mom. Education comes first, right? Isn't that what you always told me?" The edge in my voice was unmistakable. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "Katie," my father began in his warning tone. "It's fine," I said, grabbing my purse. "Olivia, Ethan, let's go." "Katie, you're overreacting," my mother said. "What's gotten into you?" I hesitated, years of keeping quiet warring with the need to finally speak up. "Nothing, Mom. I just want to make sure my kids are prepared for their tests. After all, a B+ isn't good enough in our family, is it? At least not for my children." Stephanie's eyebrows shot up. Jeff looked away uncomfortably. "What is that supposed to mean?" my mother demanded. "Nothing. Forget it. We're leaving." I headed for the door, my family trailing behind me. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Finally, Ethan spoke up from the back seat. "Mom, why does Grandma like Madison, Brandon, and Zoe more than she likes us?" The innocent question broke my heart. I exchanged glances with Daniel, who looked as pained as I felt. "Grandma and Grandpa don't like them more," I lied. "They just have different ways of showing affection to different people." "That's not true," Olivia said flatly. "They criticize everything we do, but Madison gets a party for a C+. I get straight A's, and they don't even care." "I scored 2 goals last game, and Grandpa didn't even look up from his phone," Ethan added. "But he cheered when Brandon made 1 basket." Daniel reached over and squeezed my hand, his eyes saying what I already knew. We couldn't keep subjecting our children to this. That night, after the kids went to bed, Daniel and I sat on our back deck in Monmouth, a small town about 30 minutes from my parents' home in Galesburg. The April air had a slight chill, and I wrapped myself in a cardigan as I nursed a glass of Cabernet. "I can't do it anymore," I said finally. "I can't keep exposing the kids to that. Did you see their faces tonight? They know they're being treated differently." "I agree," Daniel said. "It's not healthy for any of us." I've spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' approval. Nothing has ever been good enough, and now they're doing the same thing to our children. Daniel nodded, his face solemn in the dim porch light. "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath. "I think we need to stop going to these dinners. Maybe take a break from my parents for a while." "Are you sure? That's a big step. What choice do we have? Our kids are starting to believe they're somehow less worthy than their cousins. I won't let them grow up feeling the way I did, like no matter what they accomplish, it's never enough." The decision settled over me like a weight lifting. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, I called my mother and told her we wouldn't be attending the family dinner next month. "What? Why not?" she demanded. "It's tradition, Katie. We have other plans," I said simply. "What plans could be more important than family?" "Mom, we're just not coming. We'll see you another time." "Is this because of your little outburst yesterday? You've always been so sensitive. I don't understand why you can't just be happy for your brother and his family." I closed my eyes, counting to 10 silently. This isn't about Jeff. It's about how you treat my children compared to his. It's about how you've always treated me compared to him. That's ridiculous. We treat everyone the same. "No, Mom, you don't. And I'm not subjecting my children to it anymore." "So you're just going to destroy family traditions because of some perceived slight? This is so like you, Katie. Always dramatic, always making everything about yourself. Goodbye, Mom. I'll talk to you later." I hung up before she could respond. Over the next 3 weeks, my phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from my mother, my father, and eventually Jeff, all demanding explanations and accusing me of trying to tear the family apart out of jealousy. I ignored most of them, responding only with brief messages saying we were busy but doing well. Meanwhile, I focused on my family. We started our own Sunday tradition, a family outing followed by dinner at home, where we took turns choosing the menu and activity. Olivia selected a visit to the art museum in Peoria, followed by homemade sushi. Ethan chose a hiking trail along the Mississippi River and barbecue. Daniel wanted to try a new rock climbing gym and make pizza from scratch. When my turn came, I suggested a picnic by Lake Story and a stop at the local bookstore where we each picked out a new book. During these outings, I noticed a change in my children. They laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and seemed more relaxed. They weren't constantly looking for approval or bracing for criticism. Even their academic performance improved, not because they were trying harder to please critical grandparents, but because they were learning for the joy of learning. One evening in late May, as I was preparing a presentation for work, my phone lit up with a text from my sister-in-law, Stephanie. "Can we talk? Just us." Curious and slightly wary, I agreed to meet her for coffee the next day at a small cafe in Monmouth. "Thanks for meeting me," Stephanie said, sliding into the booth across from me. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "Jeff doesn't know I'm here." "What's going on?" I asked. She stirred her latte nervously. "I wanted to tell you, I think you're right, about your parents. I mean, the way they treat you and your kids compared to us." I hadn't expected this. "Really?" "I've always seen it, but I didn't want to acknowledge it because, well, it benefited us. But lately, I've been thinking about what it's teaching my kids. Madison barely studied for that algebra test. She doesn't think she needs to try because everyone praises her no matter what. Brandon is becoming arrogant, and Zoe thinks she's entitled to special treatment everywhere she goes." I nodded, letting her continue. "After you stopped coming to dinners, your mom started criticizing me instead. Nothing I do is right anymore. The house isn't clean enough, my casserole is too dry, my discipline is too lax or too strict. It's like she needed someone new to focus on, and I'm it." "I'm sorry," I said, genuinely meaning it. "That's hard." "Don't be sorry. It's opened my eyes. Jeff still can't see it. He's been the golden child too long to recognize what's happening. But I've started to wonder if your parents' favoritism is actually hurting our family more than helping it." We talked for over 2 hours. Stephanie shared stories of my parents' manipulation that I hadn't been aware of, how they'd create competition between our families, how they'd repeat negative comments they claimed I'd made about her, which I never had, how they'd lavish gifts on her children while making pointed remarks about how my kids didn't need the same because Daniel and I made more money. Untrue, given Jeff's dealership success. "They've been driving a wedge between us for years," Stephanie concluded. "And I let them because it felt good to be the favorite for once in my life. My own parents always preferred my sister." As we parted, Stephanie hugged me, something she'd never done in the 15 years she'd been married to my brother. "I respect what you're doing," she whispered. "Standing up for your kids. I'm trying to learn how to do that too." The following Sunday, as my family and I were returning from a boat ride on Lake Story, I spotted my parents' car in our driveway. "What are they doing here?" Olivia asked, tensing immediately. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it's going to be okay." My parents were sitting on our front porch. They stood as we approached, my mother clutching her purse nervously, my father looking stern as usual. "Katie," my mother began, "we need to talk." I nodded, unlocking the front door. "Kids, why don't you and Dad go out back for a while? I'll talk to Grandma and Grandpa." Once the others were outside, I faced my parents in the living room. Neither sat down. "It's been over a month," my mother said accusingly. "You've missed 2 family dinners. Jeff's kids keep asking where Olivia and Ethan are." I doubted that very much, but let it pass. "As I told you, we've started our own Sunday tradition." "This is ridiculous," my father cut in. "You're tearing apart the family because of some imagined favoritism. We've always treated all our grandchildren equally." "Dad, that's simply not true. And I think deep down, you know it." "Example," he demanded. "Give me one concrete example." "Last Christmas, you gave Madison, Brandon, and Zoe each the latest iPhone. You gave Olivia and Ethan $50 gift cards to Target. That's different. Jeff's kids needed phones. Yours already had them. They had 3-year-old hand-me-downs that barely worked, which you knew because Olivia told you repeatedly that hers kept shutting down. We ended up buying them new phones ourselves the next day. My mother waved dismissively. We can't be expected to keep track of every detail about everyone's lives. When Ethan won the regional science fair, you didn't even come, though it was only 20 minutes away. But you drove 3 hours to see Zoe's 15-second part in her school play. We had a prior commitment. You were helping Jeff look at boats, I cut in. He posted photos on Facebook of all of you at the marina that day. My parents exchanged glances. The issue isn't just the grandkids, I continued. It's how you've always treated me compared to Jeff. Every accomplishment of mine is minimized, while his are celebrated as if he's cured cancer. Do you have any idea what message that sends to my children? So you're punishing us because you're jealous of your brother's success? My father asked. This isn't about punishment. It's about protecting my children from feeling like they're somehow less worthy of love and appreciation. It's about breaking a cycle I've endured my entire life. That's absurd. We've always been supportive of you, my mother insisted. Really? When I graduated with honors from Northwestern, Dad's first comment was, that business degree would have been more useful than marketing. When I bought my first house, Mom, you spent the entire housewarming party pointing out everything that needed to be fixed. When I got promoted to director, neither of you congratulated me. You just asked if I'd have less time for the kids now. My parents looked genuinely confused, as if they couldn't fathom how their behavior might have affected me. We've always wanted what's best for you, my mother said. No, you've always wanted me to be who you thought I should be. And when I wasn't, when I chose marketing over business, when I married Daniel instead of the doctor you wanted me to date, when I prioritized my career alongside motherhood, you showed your disappointment in 1,000 subtle ways. My father started to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm simply establishing boundaries to protect my family. My children deserve to be celebrated for their achievements, not constantly compared to their cousins and found wanting. So you're just never coming to family dinners again? My mother asked, her voice rising. You're going to deprive your children of a relationship with their grandparents and cousins because of your hurt feelings? I'm not saying never. I'm saying not now, not until things change. What exactly do you expect to change, Katie? My father demanded. I took a deep breath. I expect you to acknowledge that you've treated Jeff's family differently than mine. I expect genuine interest in my children's lives and accomplishments. I expect you to stop dismissing everything I do while praising everything Jeff does. My parents exchanged glances again, a silent communication passing between them. This is ridiculous. My father finally said, We're not going to apologize for loving our grandchildren. That's not what I'm asking for, I said quietly. And the fact that you think it is speaks volumes. So that's it? You're cutting us off? My mother's voice cracked. I'm taking a step back. The door is open when you're ready to have an honest conversation about how your behavior affects everyone around you. They left shortly after, my mother in tears, my father stone-faced. I stood in the doorway watching their car pull away, a mixture of sadness and relief washing over me. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You okay? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me feels terrible. They're my parents. I love them. But another part feels like I just put down a burden I've been carrying my whole life. That evening, I sat down with Olivia and Ethan to explain what had happened. Are we never going to see Grandma and Grandpa again? Ethan asked, his voice small. No, honey, that's not what this means. We're just taking a break while Grandma and Grandpa think about some things. Sometimes adults need space to figure things out, just like you do when you're upset. I don't mind not seeing them, Olivia said bluntly. They make me feel bad about myself. Her words pierced my heart, confirming that I'd made the right decision, however painful. The next few weeks brought a barrage of flying monkeys, relatives calling to tell me how devastated my parents were, how I was being unreasonable, how family should come first. My aunt suggested I was having a midlife crisis. My cousin implied I was being manipulated by Daniel. Jeff sent a scathing text accusing me of being jealous of his success and taking it out on our parents. I weathered it all, responding politely but firmly that this was between my parents and me. Meanwhile, I focused on my work, my children, and my marriage. Without the constant drain of trying to please people who couldn't be pleased, I found myself more energetic, more creative, more present. 3 months after our confrontation, I received a text from my mother. Can we meet for coffee? Just us. We met at the same cafe where I'd talked with Stephanie. My mother looked older somehow, more fragile than I remembered. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, surprising me, about how we treat you differently than Jeff. I nodded, waiting. Your father still doesn't see it. He says we've always supported both of you equally. She paused, turning her coffee cup slowly. But I've been watching old videos, looking at photos, and I noticed something. What's that? In every school play, every recital, every game, we're front row for Jeff's events. For yours, sometimes we're not even in the pictures. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't realize. I truly didn't see it. I reached across the table and took her hand. I know, Mom. I don't know why we did it. Maybe because Jeff struggled more in school, so we celebrated every small victory. Maybe because you were always so capable, so independent. You didn't seem to need us the way he did. Everyone needs to feel valued, Mom, even capable, independent people. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I want to do better. With you, with Olivia and Ethan. I don't want to lose you. I don't want that either. Will you come to dinner this Sunday? I promise things will be different. I hesitated. I can't promise that. We've started our own Sunday tradition, and it's been really good for us. But maybe we could do lunch on Saturday instead? She looked disappointed, but nodded. That would be nice. That Saturday, we met at my parents' house for lunch. My father was clearly uncomfortable, but he made an effort, asking Olivia about her piano lessons and showing genuine interest when Ethan talked about his science project. My mother had made Olivia's favorite cookies and bought Ethan a book on astronomy, remembering his current fascination with space. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, old habits that slipped through, but it was a start. As we were leaving, my father pulled me aside. Katie, I want you to know I'm proud of you, of the mother you've become, the way you stand up for your kids. I may not agree with how you went about it, but I respect it. Coming from my father, this was monumental. I hugged him, feeling a knot of emotion in my throat. Over the following months, our relationship slowly evolved. My parents started attending Olivia's recitals and Ethan's games without being reminded. They began acknowledging my professional achievements with genuine pride. They still doted on Jeff's children, but they made visible efforts to treat all their grandchildren with equal enthusiasm and respect. One evening in late October, as Daniel and I sat on our deck watching the sunset, he asked, "Do you regret it? Standing up to your parents like that?" I thought about the pain of those confrontations, the strain of holding firm against the pressure to return to the status quo. I thought about the growth I'd witnessed in my parents, the newfound confidence in my children, the peace in our home. No, I said finally. It was hard, and it still is sometimes. But my whole life, I let them measure my worth against Jeff's. I let them teach my children that their cousins were somehow more deserving of celebration. Breaking that pattern was worth every difficult moment. Daniel nodded, leaning over to kiss my temple. I'm proud of you. Inside, I could hear Olivia practicing piano, the notes drifting through the open window. Ethan was sprawled on the living room floor, building something elaborate with his engineering kit. Later, we'd have dinner together, sharing our days without fear of judgment or comparison. This was what I'd fought for, not the destruction of family ties, as my parents had initially accused, but the creation of a family dynamic built on mutual respect rather than conditional approval. Not the rejection of my parents, but the establishment of healthier boundaries with them. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else to measure my worth. I could see it clearly in the family I'd built, in the strength I'd found, in the peace we now enjoyed. And that was victory enough.